Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 259 of the Orange Pill Investor. And today I want to talk about MicroStrategy, Semler, Punter Jeff, and the growth rate of trees. And I gotta say that I'm grateful for the MSTR community because every time I read a post or watch a video, I'm just inspired to thinking about something new or from a fresh angle. And maybe this didn't seem uh, like prophetic or interesting to most people, but this really caught me off guard. And I'm going to go ahead and just play it real quick and then talk about it.
And the reason I think Preston and I had this conversation was because I argued this is calculus, not algebra.
Hmm.
And there's this the concept of rate of change is important in my mind when thinking about the expansion of net asset value and thinking about the probability of new entrants coming into play. New entrants being new buyers of MicroStrategy, passive flows, passive index flows, along with retail piling in and other institutional investors who are recognizing the power of this MicroStrategy trade. There's this concept in natural resource economics that comes to my mind when thinking about um, the calculus associated with the growth rate. So there's this concept in forestry. So the growth rate of trees, where the growth rate of trees when they're very young is very slow. And then when they start to get, 10, 20, 30 years old, the growth rate increases really rapidly. And when the tree starts to get really old, the growth rate slows down. And so if you're managing a forest and you're trying to maximize the yield of your forest, you identify the derivative of the growth rate of the tree, and that tells you where the rate of change starts to slow down and go the opposite direction. And at that point, it's the maximum yield uh, on your harvest, basically for forestry management. And so when I think about net asset value and I think about like this MicroStrategy equity, um, there's this concept of like I think there's going to be a little bit of a S curve type adoption with MicroStrategy as well, where we're still in the really early days of who knows about MicroStrategy, right? Like I run around New York and London. I talk to these people about what MicroStrategy is doing, and literally people laugh at me. They have no idea. It seems super scammy to everybody, and they don't understand. One, they don't understand Bitcoin. They haven't put the time in to understand Bitcoin, and two, um, it's hard for them to conceptualize like the framework of a company uh, purchasing Bitcoin or transitioning 100% of their cash assets from USD to Bitcoin, and not understanding the downstream implications of that.
Yeah, that's a good spot to leave it, I think. So the second I heard this, I think I was walking the dogs and I was like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Because if I'm looking at, there's a little bit of a debate as far as like, okay, is SMLR the next MicroStrategy, and should we try to get in now? And the way that I think about all of these companies that try to execute MicroStrategy's playbook, I think it if somebody could probably figure out the calculus on this, I think they could probably predict which company is at its growth stage, just like these trees in forestry. And the way that MicroStrategy is accumulating Bitcoin, and the new metric, I guess, is Bitcoin yield, Bitcoin per share, stats per share, etc. But it's not necessarily about the rate of Bitcoin per share accumulation, but the rate of change of Bitcoin accumulation. And so I think that's what hit me the hardest about Jeff's uh, specifically calling out this is calculus, not algebra, because I want to be I guess watering the tree or planting the tree or investing in the tree slash company that is about to hit a growth spurt. It's about to hit that massive uh, growth phase and then harvest that tree once it reaches the end of its life cycle. And that may take my entire lifetime as far as MicroStrategy is concerned. So I may not even have to worry about it. MicroStrategy's growth phase may outlive me, but that's kind of the way that I see this. So if somebody could figure out the calculus on that, it might be something that you could trade with. Um, I wish I could say, oh yeah, I got it all figured out. But I was kind of thinking about it too. If we're just going to stick with the symbolism, MicroStrategy is probably like a redwood, and it's just going to be the biggest tree in the forest. It's the first tree that got planted. It's going to be the biggest. It's going to be casting shade, and to a certain extent, it's it's leading the way, and it's this like the starter pack for a new forest. But at the same time, it's also casting shade, and it's going to be a little bit difficult for certain types of plants to grow since MicroStrategy is kind of like blotting out the sun. But there's going to be different kinds of trees too. So SMLR might not be a redwood, but it might be a tree that grows faster at times. I personally, and this is not financial advice, I don't even own any SMLR. I would not consider them until they get an options market, just because I'm a degen options seller. More more lately a degen option buyer, but that's kind of due to MicroStrategy as well, breaking my models. But MicroStrategy's growth phase, if they're going to be a 500-year redwood tree, might be longer and stronger than everyone else's, but there might be some other trees that are planted later, but during certain periods of time may grow faster and may be able to be harvested over and over again during MicroStrategy's life cycle. And that presents the option for me to maybe adopt some of these things as trading pairs. They'll probably all be somewhat correlated to Bitcoin, like they're all going to be correlated to the season. The sun is going to be at its strongest in summer, so there's probably going to be these cycles that all of the companies are kind of tethered to. But depending on the calculus, I guess, of each individual company, there may be some growth spurts that could be taken advantage of. And I know some people say it's impossible to time the market, just buy and hold and sit on your hands forever. But I don't really think it's that unusual of a concept to rebalance. I think that's pretty standard, pretty standard TradFi concept, that if I am involved or invested in two different assets. For example, like let's just say I had ARK Invest, and it's that's kind of, I guess, a tech play, innovation play, and I had the S&P 500. Well, in a certain environment, tech is going to go to the moon, and if I don't rebalance, like say I want a 50-50 split, but all of a sudden my ARK play is 80% of my portfolio. If I don't rebalance, then when ARK crashes, then I'm right back to to square one, and I really haven't benefited myself from a diversified portfolio. You could also probably plug it into the Kelly criterion, the gambler's formula, and figure out what a proper allocation between those two could be. Um, but yeah, I we are in a very, very opportunistic time right now, and it's going to be the best time to just absorb all of the best information because the space is going to get completely cluttered. Even now, I can't get enough MicroStrategy content. I almost have to force myself to enjoy a football game because I just want to be listening to MSTR podcasts all freaking day long, along with Bitcoin, my favorite Bitcoiners. But so even right now, it's like, drinking from a fire hose, and it's only going to get better slash worse. There's going to be tons and tons of more content and content creators jumping into the space, but there's also going to be a lot of grifting. So anytime there's money to be made, there are going to be people attracted to the space that will say anything. So follow your favorite people now before the space is completely contaminated by grifters. And I think that's all I got for now. Be good, Joe.